Bitcoin is close to becoming worthless.
Let's go. Now, what's the Bitcoin?
Bitcoin's like rat poison.
Yeah. Oh,
The greatest scam in history.
let's get it.
Bitcoin will go to fucking zero.
Yeah.
Alright, you ungovernable misfits. I'm your host, Max. Everybody knows that Bitcoin is useless, worthless, and doomed to fail. But what if everyone's wrong? What if it's the system that is doomed to fail? Join me as I speak to some of the brightest people in the space and slither to the deepest, darkest depths of the Bitcoin rabbit hole. Welcome back, everyone. Today's episode is with Phil and Nico from Simply Bitcoin. I'm sure you've already seen their videos, but if you haven't, it's worth checking it out. And I reached out to these guys after I realized we had the same sponsor with Crypto Cloaks, and I thought it's well worth getting to know them. And I'm very glad I did. They were proper Bitcoiners and really interesting conversation. Really enjoyed getting to know them. As I said, Crypto Cloaks is my new sponsor, so I want to give them a shout out. And for anyone who is building a node or wanting to hide some hardware, or they want something cool for their office, then cryptocloaks.com is the place to go. They've got really high quality products, they've got a fantastic team, and they are Bitcoin only. So cryptocloaks.com. Next up is CoinFloor UK. They have been sponsoring me from almost the beginning of this show. They have a fantastic team, and if you're in the UK, there really is nobody better. If you're going to use a KYC exchange, then it's really worth looking into these guys. The thing I really like about it is that they will actually show you that they're not rehypothecating your Bitcoin. I don't think there's anyone else out there who's doing it. So go and check them out at CoinFloor UK. Enjoy the show and reach out if you have any questions. Hey guys, how you doing?
Hey, what's happening? Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you loud and clear. I'm not sure about Nico yet.
Could you guys hear me?
Yeah, can hear you as well.
Yeah, hold on. Let me change because my mic's saying that it's using my computer mic and not my mic
Okay.
mic. I just don't know how to change it. I've never used this program before.
There'll be like a little thing where it says mic default, and that'll show you which mic. And then it may be that you can't change it mid recording. Let's have a look.
Should I join? All right, I'll be right back.
All right, cool.
Man, thank you so much for having us on, by the way.
Oh, it's an absolute pleasure. I saw that you also had the same sponsor with Crypto Cloaks, and I actually been meaning for a long time. You know what it's like with so much amazing content in the space. It's kind of like keeping up with it's hard. And I know you guys have been doing your thing for some time and very well respected. And I thought, right, it's about time I catch up and just hear from you guys and learn from you guys, because I know you've been doing this for a while.
Man, I really appreciate it. That means a lot. You're just so you know, your podcast is very highly regarded. So, and I'm not just saying that because you invited us. I'm like, when you frequent enough different Bitcoiner groups, like everybody loves your material, man. So shout out.
We've got some crazy fuckers in this space.
That's right. We do, right? People are insane.
They are. It's so much fun. I mean, I haven't been doing this for that long, but I feel like it fits. It's the first time I feel like I've fit in any community, and people just seem to be very open and honest and say what they feel. And yeah, it's a lot of fun. So yeah, absolute pleasure to have you guys on. And I've been checking out some of what you've been doing. I planned to do it yesterday, but had a shitload of editing to do. So I was sat up all night doing that. And then I was like, oh, quickly get a little bit through what you guys are doing. And I love the YouTube stuff. It's really, really cool. Like, I like that it's short and sharp, and I feel like someone can watch that and just know what's happening in the space at that time. So How did you guys get into doing that, and how long has that been going for?
Oh man. So what? We started doing that. I should probably wait though till Nico comes back because he's
Oh,
kind.
I'm here. I'm here. I
Oh,
just I joined in silently. I didn't want to
Lurking in
disrupt
the
the vibe.
background.
Oh, because
Yeah,
I
Phil.
yeah, no, because it just shows you as guest. Okay, anyways. Yeah, so Nico, man, why don't you tell the story? Because really I think you're the brains behind it. You just asked me to come along for the ride. So let's tell him.
Man, I'm the brains. No. Simply Bitcoin is Phil and I. It wouldn't be. The show would be it would be a disaster if it was just me, at least. Just because I'm kind of a hothead. But yeah, man, look, I I I was kind of the Bitcoin content space is heavily saturated, right? And it's heavily saturated in long format style conversations, which is good. Like it's a good thing, right? However, if you have a long day at work, right, and you just want to take it easy, you just want to disconnect at the end of the day, it's very hard to sit through a whole podcast, right? So we created the show in a way where not only do you get informed, right, but you also laugh, you're entertained. It's very easy to consume, right? And we did that totally on purpose, right from the beginning. That was our design. That's what we set out to be. Surprisingly, Phil and I had no idea. The community received it very well, right? So we're very happy with that. We're very happy how the community has received us. And man, it's honestly a blessing just to make content about something that you like every single day. And not only do we make content, we have a lot of fun doing it, right? We're laughing the entire time, right? So it's a blessing. It's awesome. And I'm super lucky to find Phil. He was the first person that I asked because I also do a podcast as well, right? And you get to meet a lot of people. You get to meet a lot of Bitcoiners, but it needed to be a specific type of person, right? Or just it wasn't going to work out, right? And as soon as I had the conversation with Phil, I think I told my girlfriend that, and I was like, "This is the guy. This is the perfect dude." And I ended up being right. It was perfect. So I reached out to Phil and I was like, "Hey, do you want to do this show?" And he's like, "Absolutely." And then we had absolutely no idea what we were doing at first. But you know how things are. If the longer you stick to it, it just comes together. And man, it just worked out. It's just one of those things.
Our first step. Oh, go ahead.
No, so all I was going to say is it's funny how we gravitate to certain people, particularly like after an interview or after an interaction. There are just some people you're just like, I need to work with this person, and that sounds like that was just instant for you two, which is cool.
It was perfect because I'm from Miami, dude. I'm Hispanic. We tend to be over the top, right? We're intense people, right? And that specific personality type is not. There's nothing wrong with that, but when you're doing something every single day, that's that you kind of have to find the right person for that, and Phil, Phil, he's more calm, he's wiser, he's older, so he really balances me out. So yeah, man, I'm super happy, and I'm super lucky to have found Phil and find myself in this situation.
Yeah, I just wanted to add, I think one of the keys also is that we don't take ourselves seriously. Like there's, I think that's kind of one of the issues in the space. Like people want to come across as like, kind of like these all-knowing oracles or these points of reference, and that's really nice and everything like that. But the reality is, we're in uncharted territory. Okay, nobody really understands what the implications of Bitcoin are. People are writing all kinds of philosophical stuff. They're creating stories. They're creating, like fantasy storyboards. I mean, people really are just, we are in the total exploration phase. So for people to just come out and pretend like they're these, these knowers of things, I think it's funny. And I think Nico also thinks it's funny. And as a result, we don't end up taking ourselves too seriously. So people get to laugh with us and they get to learn with us.
That's very refreshing. I like that style. It's too much of that, like you were explaining. Like there's too many know-it-alls, too many people who just look down their noses at everybody else, and it's like an arrogance that I just find, yeah, it is funny. It's just like, guys, no one fucking knows it all. This is, like you say, this is right at the beginning. None of us know what's going to happen. We all I think we all know it's going to be big, whatever's happening, but we have no idea where this really goes or how it plays out. It's just exciting to watch, and there's probably more. There's a lot more sense in just listening rather than talking and learning from all the smart people in the space. And that's what I'm trying to do, is just like sit and have conversations with really smart people who know stuff I don't know, and it's a lot of fun.
Absolutely. I mean, the humbling stance. People sit there and sometimes look at humility and think of it as a bad thing. But at the end of the day, humility allows a person to open their mind, right? It allows them to empty the cup so that the cup can be filled. And when a person sits there with the full cup and they act like it all the time, it kind of ruins it, right? It doesn't allow that proper exchange. Sorry, Nico, you were going to say something.
No, I just to add to your points, Phil, I think you're absolutely right. I think one of the benefits of Bitcoin is, that it just destroys, all these preconceived notions, right? The example that I always give is, the legacy finance guys. They dress up in a suit and they go there, and they act, right? They might not verbally tell you, but they tell you indirectly that they're better than you. That's essentially what they're doing. Right. And you kind of are feeling that elitism from established Bitcoiners, Bitcoin content creators in the space. Unfortunately, some of them. Right. So I think it's refreshing that you see two individuals that are just, man, like, we're just there having a good time. We're telling you. Right. It's so much easier to consume that every day. Right. You don't have to try. You can leave it in the background. You're going to laugh. You're going to have a good time. And at the end of it, you're going to take some information with you. Right. So, I think it's necessary. This isn't an original idea. I just saw that the shitcoin channels use a very similar method, but they use it towards pumping bags. So they'll talk about the price mostly. But they'll use the catchy thumbnails. They'll use the titles. They'll use things like that. So I agree with their method. I think their method is extremely effective. I just think that their content is crap, right? So what if you take their method, right? You don't talk about the price. You talk about content. You talk about Bitcoin culture. You talk about news, right? You talk about fails. The favorite part of my show is just Phil completely ripping shitcoiners to shreds. But it's special, man. And I'm super blessed to be in this situation. And man, it's just been a hell of a ride so far. And I'm super excited. Like Phil has been saying, I'm super exciting to see where this where this
fails
ends up.
Part I particularly enjoyed. Was it Mark Cuban you had on a recent one for his fails with the Dogecoin bit?
Absolutely. I can't. So I have so look, I've got real gripe with Mark Cuban. Okay. And also, and besides like the general, the general stupidity, overall stupidity of Mark Cuban, for me, it's a little bit more personal, because when I was a shitcoiner, okay, I fell for his for the ICO that he was backing, him and Ashton Kutcher.
XRP was it?
No, not as bad. Don't get me wrong. Still total crap. Unicoin Gold, okay? And it was going to be this gaming token and all this stuff. And I read about it. And back then, all I was doing was reading all these different white papers and totally buying up all this bullshit tech narrative, and the, like all of it, the unit bias, the tech narrative, the partnership parade, all of that garbage. And, like for me, when I saw what happened and I got burned by it, right, and I saw that this person just completely disappeared, I realized that I had been had, and I was like, Okay, so for me, like when I see him out there now talking about how he'd rather hold banana coin than Bitcoin, okay, but then he goes off and shills, Dogecoin, because he's holding a whole bunch of bags of them, really just to accumulate more Bitcoin. I find that like it's cringe, and with somebody that has that big of a following, he should know better. He really should.
And that much money, right? Like I often
Oh
speak to
yeah.
people about this, and I'm like, it's clear that these people are sociopaths, that they've got something not quite right with them. Because if I had the sort of money, or even 100th of the sort of money that these kind of guys have, who are lying and pumping bags and doing all this deceitful, disgusting shit, I just think, like, why? You could have like such a nice life for the rest of your life and be a good person. There's absolutely no need to do any of this stuff. It's just that they are lunatics, it seems. Like, why? Just go diving and like fuck around the world and just enjoy your life and your family and have good food. Like, what the fuck are they doing? It's so weird.
I mean, to me, oh,
Well,
sorry, Nico. I just wanted to say, to me, they're narcissistic sociopaths. But Nico, go on.
Yeah, just to add to Phil's point, they're definitely narcissistic. Max Kaiser calls them egomaniacs. I think it's the system, the actual fiat system itself incentivizes bad behavior, right? Like, and in Bitcoin, it's very different, right? Bitcoin, the way it's architected, it actually incentivizes good behavior, right? And if you start, being dishonest, you start whatever, you have this decentralized immune system on Twitter that just completely goes after you, right? No matter who you are, no matter what, there was a joke the other day, whether you have a PhD, whether you're a well-respected economist, we do not care. If you start lying, if you start playing, if you start, consciously trying to hurt others, as is the case with Mark Cuban, man, we'll call you out on your bullshit, right? So I think it's the system. I think that there's this very like famous like Bitcoin adage. It's like, you don't change Bitcoin, Bitcoin changes you. I think that once a lot of people start going to, instead of relying on, look, I'm going to save, I have $10,000 in the bank. Once they start saving in Bitcoin, I think that you'll start to see the best in people rather than the worst in people.
Have you guys found a change in you since getting involved in Bitcoin?
You can go first, Nico, if you want.
Dude, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. It's changed, man. So, Bitcoin essentially saved my life. Gave me purpose again. I wasn't doing so hot. And because I was doing so hot, actually, I gravitated towards Bitcoin because I wanted to get out of my situation. So, and in my personal example, absolutely. And it's, again, it incentivizes you to save, right? So, it incentivizes you to be frugal, right? It incentivizes you to care about your reputation. I think my reputation is very important to me. And yeah, man. And I think that once someone does the full transition, they're not a fiat Bitcoiner, right? They're not in Bitcoin essentially to get fiat out of it. They're in Bitcoin because they think it's a better money. It's a better way to save. I think that you'll start to see, it sounds outlandish right now, but you'll start to see a better world, right? Maybe, 10, 15, 20 years from now, right? I truly believe that.
For me, I've always had an attitude of discord towards the system, and so I did realize pretty early. I mean, for me, anyways, compared to my peers, I did realize early on that there was something wrong with the money, and I realized that my job alone wasn't going to be able to, let's say, help me create the type of life that I'm looking for. So I got very disillusioned with just the system as a whole, and I was like, "There's no, I hope. Is it okay if we swear?"
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah, it's encouraged.
Okay. Well, I was gonna say, like, I mean, there's, there was, there was no fucking way that I was gonna, get to where I wanted to go, and unfortunately, I realized that the system that we had was this constantly expanding wheel. We're like hamsters on this wheel, and the wheel gets bigger and bigger, and we have to pedal faster and faster to keep the same pace. So I became very disillusioned, and I wanted to me, like, gold is, I just didn't really care about gold. It doesn't do anything for me. My father works with metal, so I've, since a young age, always been, very much around gold, silver, palladium, all of these things, and I understand their value propositions and whatnot, and it just didn't do it for me. And I found the world, to me anyways, besides my family and my loved ones, to be a very, kind of like dull place. Because here we are using this money that constantly gets devalued that we have no control over. And so my whole plan was that I was just going to, buy dividend stocks that pay increasing dividends and just continually buy them, right, throughout my life until eventually I create a source of income that will hopefully keep up with the pace of inflation. And, that's pretty much what I was looking at. And when I found all this to say, I was not excited. Right? Like, to me, it's like, okay, well, this is like giving up. Okay. And then I found Bitcoin. So I am definitely going to say that it changed my life because it made me a lot more hopeful about the future. And it made me hopeful about people again. Because I felt that, at that point that everybody was in the same rut, and okay, we've all come to accept this shitty money, and we've all come to accept this, this monetary poverty and this loss of purchasing power, and what are we going to do? So for me, this gave me renewed faith in humanity.
Yeah, that's seems to be that a lot of Bitcoiners were in that sort of headspace. And what you had was you were far more ahead than the average person because you'd actually worked out the money's fucked. And before Bitcoin, you're obviously saying like, oh, okay, well, I'm going to look into stocks that pay dividends, and then at least that's some sort of hack. But it's only a hack to stand still. It's not a hack to move forwards, and that's pretty fucking depressing. Like, obviously, it's depressing because you realize that the further that you look into things, the whole hierarchical system that we find ourselves in is corrupt beyond belief. It's just very well masked, especially in the Western culture. And, people just don't see it because it's very well practiced. Sometimes in other countries, it's a little bit more visible, but certainly in the UK, and I'd imagine in America as well, like, these things the corruption's very slick. And therefore, once you work that out, it's easy to just think, oh, fuck it, I don't want to trust people at all because look at what's happening around me. And I love this positivity that comes from the Bitcoin space, which you rightly say is the complete opposite. It is completely different, and people see hope with it. And that's an exciting place to be. I think that's why so many of us are drawn in and we don't come out again.
Actually, I just want to touch on the positivity aspect, because you'll see this a lot from like from Bitcoin, Bitcoin haters and no coiners and stuff like that. That like we're sitting there, we're like the end of the world type people. Like, everything's got to end so that Bitcoin thrives. This just goes to show first of all, how early we are. Number one, number two, how ignorant people are, because we are not the end of the world types. We are very hopeful about the future. Because we can now, we now have a chance to base our activities on a sound money principle, which changes the game. So I really don't understand. It frustrates me, the people that think that we're not positive.
And Nico, were you in a similar sort of position mentally prior to Bitcoin? Had you worked out the money was fucked, or like where were you at?
Dude, I was turning 24 years old. I was in a very bad place in my life. Just some family issues, and it was bad. I would say it was rock bottom for me. I wasn't really thinking about the money because I didn't have any money. But I knew that I wanted to get out of my situation. And I think that Bitcoin attracts you with greed, right? That's how it gets you hooked. But once you're hooked, then you start to understand. Once you start learning, then you start to understand that it's much more than number go up, right? It's much more than that. But I was initially attracted to Bitcoin because of greed, man. That's why I got in. I wanted to get out of the situation that I was in. I knew the system was broken because of things that have happened to my family, and it wasn't totally the 2008 financial crisis that destroyed my family, but that was a main cause that kind of started the domino effect. So I already was very disillusioned when you have at the time you had Obama. He's a progressive president, and the fact that he didn't put any central banker or any banker in jail after the 2008 financial crisis, that should tell you everything you need to know, right? And the fact that they got bailed out, and the people that bailed them out was the average Joe, was the everyday citizen with their tax dollars. Man, it's a clear example, and we're not even done. Like right now, what you're seeing with the money printing, like the out of control money printing, that really started in 2008. Like that was like the beginning of it. And that hasn't really stopped. I think that we're reaching now, an end stage. Of course, it's my opinion, right? But yeah, man, it's. I think that Bitcoin attracts people. The first people that it attracts are people that are already disillusioned and have already distrusting of the system, right? So in my particular case, I got screwed by the system, right? And I wanted to get out of the system. And in Phil's case, he also felt disillusioned because he wanted to do his investments. He didn't feel like there was a way out. He didn't see hope in that way, right? So you find a way. And once you find Bitcoin, initially you don't know what the hell it is, but the longer you stay in it, the longer you stay in the rabbit hole, the deeper you go, the more you realize, not only are you right, you're absolutely right. So man, it's amazing. It's amazing.
Like you said, actually, about the type of people that are built for this. It's so true. Almost everyone I speak to is either, the majority are, they've been fucked by the system, they've had real hardships in life, they are looking at the world in a completely different way to others and haven't quite found their fit, which is why I say like the ungovernable misfits. They are the misfits in the world, and they don't back down, they don't sit down, and they probably had problems at school and in jobs and everything else, because if you see something that's wrong, you're going to say it, and that's not really accepted in mainstream culture. The other small percentage of people who are in this space are imposters, and they don't really get it. They get to a point where they understand the number go up technology. They understand that. They're like, oh, it's a scarce asset. Yeah, that's cool. But what they very much miss, as far as I can see, with all those people, and normal people would say, oh, they're the smartest people in the space. They're the people from the banking system. They're the people from hedge funds. They'll understand this. But they completely underestimate the network Bitcoin. They only look at the token Bitcoin. And that's the really interesting bit for me. And I think for most Bitcoiners I speak to is like, what's this thing going to do? Like, where does it start to change things next? Because it's not just about a wealth transfer. It's about freedom. Right.
Yeah, it really is. This actually goes back to the talk that we had where we had Alex Gladstein on this week as our special guest on Simply Bitcoin. And, he was talking about how Bitcoin is a Trojan horse, for freedom. That's exactly it. I mean, and we don't really understand the true implications of what freedom enabling technology is, because as of right now, the freedom enabling technology that we've had, I will argue, has been insular. It's freedom enabled, but it has a ceiling. Okay. And I say that in the sense that because our base money, okay, is garbage. Okay. We are always trapped by the central bankers and their greed. So anytime they want to disempower us, they can just keep printing. And we know that. But for some reason, tons of people don't accept that. And now how does this limit us, right? So the people that have access to these fiat funds, they're the ones that get to develop the technology. They're the ones that get to, quote unquote, make the breakthroughs and whatnot. So at the end of the day, whether we want to accept it or not, everything that we have right now is being allowed by these central bankers. It is by their virtue that we have that we have these technologies, because they are the creators of the money. Once we take that out of their hands, the creativity gets to go back into the network to the people. And yes, everybody can be creative right now, but think about it. Everybody can be creative right now. What do they have to do? Well, you want to start a business. Where are you going to go? You're going to go to a bank. What are you going to do? You're going to go get a loan. Who's going to take a look at your business and decide whether it's viable or not? Somebody that works for the bank. Somebody that's been brainwashed into a specific method of how a business and a product should work.
Mm-hmm.
So you see what I'm saying? Like, it's all, we may not see the entire mechanisms, but they run very deep and they affect us. They affect us to our core. So what this is going to change, this is going to lift. I believe that Bitcoin is going to lift that power structure from the technology, which will enable the not just the Bitcoin technology, but the technologies that grow up around Bitcoin to truly enable freedom.
Yeah, there's a lot going to happen, isn't there? What an exciting time to be around. What an exciting time to be alive and to be at the beginning of this around a bunch of people who are incredibly creative and smart and are most likely going to become quite wealthy. So they're going to be able to influence the changes in this world rather than a group of elite psychopaths. It is creatives and people who want freedom. The way the world can change is just so exciting.
It's not only is it incredibly exciting, dude, I think that as the human race in general, it's very hard to understand, but the implications that will have on society are just, like you can't even wrap your head around. Like right now, for example, I'm originally from Venezuela, right? So, when anyone says, socialism or communism, I immediately a red flag comes in my head. I'm like, you have no idea what you're asking for. And in the U.S. right now, it's become quite popular, and with good reason, right? The wealth inequality in the U.S. is freaking crazy. But what a lot of people don't understand, right, is that the economic system is working perfectly fine. In fact, it's the best one there is. It's the best one historically that has ever existed. Mm-hmm. Socialism never works, right? So they're right to be pissed off. But what they don't understand is that the economic system is working. What's broken is the money. The money is broken. And because the money is broken, it's creating all these economic hardships. And people's, immediate reaction is like, this needs to change. And they're completely right, but they're looking in they're looking in the wrong place. And I think that it's our job, all of us as Bitcoin content creators, to help as much of these people as possible, to show them that there's a better way. Because I haven't met one person that doesn't have something to lose, right? Because of course my investment bank friends, they hate Bitcoin, but anyone else that doesn't have something to lose because of Bitcoin, man, when they get it, they absolutely love it. And they understand what it is I'm talking about and why I am so passionate, why I'm so crazy, and why I am the way I am, right? But it's scary because these are the same people that are going to push the climate narrative, that are going to push, Ethereum proof of stake. It's not, burning any energy. It's, all the bullshit, they're going to pedal, and they're going to pedal that hard because it fits the narrative, their narrative. Right. And yeah, man, it's just our job as Bitcoiners not to fight back. It's just to tell the truth. Just look, this is the reality. Bitcoin uses excess energy. It uses energy that was already going to waste. Right. That's the truth. Like, here are the facts. And I think that it's like trying to stop the internet, man. Like that's if you're trying to stop Bitcoin, that's what you're trying to stop. You're trying to stop the internet. Bitcoin's inevitable at this point. The price is just catching up.
If you were to present the facts around Bitcoin and the facts around the current financial system, there is no question that this is a better system and better for the world. Like it's provable, but people don't like facts. people don't like to think. And I think a lot of that comes probably from the education system. It's a very, very well designed machine to make people remember. They have good memories. The ones who fit in the boxes from the education system go on to the better jobs because they can regurgitate information that doesn't make sense. And the ones that question it get in trouble, don't fit in. And that sort of pushes the way that the world works. I think that putting across this information to people, and there are so many things you have to put the information across. Like I'm constantly saying to people, firstly, look into Bitcoin. Secondly, like think about putting a face mask on and getting a fucking vaccine with all the stuff that's going on. You know, consider the fact that maybe freedom of movement is more important than something that kills 0.02% of the population, possibly, you know, even with the numbers massaged. And just, you know, read a book, look at history, think. Certainly in the UK, they don't want to. They just go, well, I've read the news, I've seen the science, I've heard the talking heads, and that's it. Have you guys found a good way of explaining to no coiners about these sort of ideas? Have you found a style that works particularly well, or is it just shotgun fire and, you know, 1 in 1,000 gets it?
The method that I use, it's quite effective. Man, I buy a bunch of hardware wallets, you know, like literally 50 of them, and I'll store them, you know. And when I meet somebody, what I usually do is I give them Bitcoin, and I give them a hardware wallet. You know, that's what I do. And I would say around 50% of them, it works.
That's crazy generous.
And 50% of them, no, it's not though. You think it is, but it's not, because what I'm doing is pumping my own bag, right? You think about it, right? I'm orange pilling them, right? And I promise them, listen, I'm going to give you this for free, but you have to promise me something. They always do. You have to teach 2 other people what I taught you, right? And some of them do, or I would say like 10, 20%, right? But if you zoom out and you look at on the grand scale of things, right, it just becomes a multiplying effect, right? Because they have a good experience with Bitcoin, then they're going to tell their family members, and then they're going to tell their family members, and they're going to tell their family members, right? And I promised myself that because Bitcoin gave me purpose again, because Bitcoin seriously like saved my life, right? I always promised that I would give back my hash rate and that I would always educate, right? And I would always give back. That was like my contribution. That's what I was going to give back, right? So, yeah, man. What about you, Phil?
I have had varying unsuccessful situations. I find orange pilling is one of the most difficult things because, number one, I'm not a good salesman. Number two, I find it very personal. I think that every person, it goes to it when it's pitched, when it's explained to them, it has to be explained in a way that is meaningful to them. And that's where it becomes, for me anyways, very, very challenging. Most of the people that, don't get me wrong, I've been quite successful in orange pilling, let's say, the majority of the people in my direct circle. But let's say like some of my friends, I will explain Bitcoin to them. They will understand Bitcoin at a very general surface level, and they will immediately degrade into shitcoining. So because right away they will look at it and go, that's expensive. And then, why don't you talk to me about Ethereum? Or, what is this? And I kid you not, man, my boss. Okay, so check this out. Okay, so like my boss at work who saw me go through my shitcoining knows how much money I lost. Okay, knows, like, I explained to him, like, because he's also a friend. So like I've explained to him about how they are scams. I've been able to dismantle all the scams. And this whole time he's buying Bitcoin. And then all of a sudden, like 3 months ago, he's like, what about Doge? I'm like, fuck off, man. Honestly, I'm like, you know everything that I just explained to you. I go, and you're going to talk to me about shitcoins? I'm like, you know what, man? I'm like, you're going to get wrecked. I'm like, do what you want. Yeah, at this point, I don't even try to orange people. I don't even try to orange pill people. I actually avoid it altogether. And if people talk to me about Bitcoin, I'll be reserved. Like, unless a person actually is trying to pull and extract information, I'm not really going to push for it.
It's probably wise. It's hard. I'm starting to go more that way as well, but it's more the things that surround it. So, like, I'm sure you guys have found the same, that once you dig deep enough and the more time you spend in this space, it shapes your views on most things. Like, there's not a lot that it doesn't touch. And so it tends to be more the conversations that aren't directly about Bitcoin that catch me out. It's more, I'll have to say something where someone's talking about finance in general. Someone's sat here talking to me about property and that they know that it's going to be running up for the next couple of years. And this is my theory on why. And I'm just thinking, well, that's wrong. And it is very difficult to sit and keep your mouth shut for everything, because almost everything that is discussed, in my opinion, is wrong. And so is that something you guys struggle with as well, or is that just me in my own little weird bubble?
Dude, I can't relate to what I call my fiat friends, or my real life friends, or the friends that, better said, friends that I grew up with, right? Because we're operating on different wavelengths. We just are, and it seems to me that the people that I get along with the most are Bitcoiners. Just because, man, it's like we're awake. Like, we see. It's crazy because I talked to someone who still hasn't been orange pilled, and man, I see them as asleep. I see them as like a peg in the wheel of a system. It's crazy, man. Like, it's startling. And I've talked to other Bitcoiners and they tell me the same thing. They tell me, it's like, look, I can't relate to my normie friend. They call them normie, and they're normie friends anymore. And it's true, because it changes your behavior, right? My normie friends are still like going out, they're going to clubs, they're trying to, live that lifestyle. And that's what fiat incentivizes, right? Because you're constantly losing it's constantly losing value through this like hidden tax called inflation. You're incentivized, whether you're aware of it or not, to spend it, or it forces you to become an investor, right? And it forces you to learn, to kind of have to learn about the financial system just to maintain your wealth, right? Whereas Bitcoin, you could do whatever you want. You want to be a surfer, you want to be an artist, you want to be whatever, do that. And then any money that you make, just put it into Bitcoin. You no longer have to be an investor. You no longer have to get into a field that you're not really passionate about, right? And there's side effects of that as well, right? You look at like the financial industry, specifically like investment banks. They're much, much bigger than what they need to be. And they're much bigger because fiat forces people, wealthy people in particular, to have to invest, because that's the only way you're going to store your value. Gold sucks. Try buying $1 million worth of gold. That's very heavy. Okay. And then try getting rid of that $1 million, right? It's not an easy process, right? So, man, I think that, and you're going to see this very quickly. I think that within 15 years, the world as we know it today is going to be completely different. And the only analogy that I could point out is back in the 2000s, when the internet was just, coming about. Did you know that there was going to be a website that you could access every single every single video that has ever existed? Did you know that there was going to be a place that you could access it on? Did you know that there was going to be a website where you could communicate with people worldwide? You had no idea that was even possible, right? So that's kind of like where we are with Bitcoin. And you look at how much the internet has changed society, right? From where it began to where we are now. Right now, we're talking through the internet. Bitcoin is on the internet. YouTube is on the internet. So everything we do is on the internet, right? So Bitcoin is going to do the same thing, but it's not only going to do it to communication and, groups and entertainment. It's going to do it to finance. It's going to do it to money, right? And I have no idea, and anyone that tells you otherwise is lying. I have no idea what that world's going to look like, but I'm really excited, and we all have front row seats, so it's going to be awesome.
It is. It is going to be. It's going to be an exciting world. What about you, Phil? Have you found it difficult to communicate with others out? So it's a two-part question, this. Firstly, have you found it difficult? And I can imagine the answer is going to be yes, because it is to most people I speak to. And if so, are we in a fucking cult? Because what is going on that we're so different to everybody else?
Man, okay, so look, I think I'm going to start it off by saying we as humans, we live derivative lives, and as a result, we how could I say this? We have learned helplessness. So I think that, a lot of stuff, right, for the average person, a lot of stuff isn't worth thinking about because it's too big. It's too big to tackle, right? I'm just going to go and I'm just going to, get a counterparty involved and mitigate my risk with a counterparty, get rid of the personal responsibility. And I think that's part of it. So this is why, yes, to answer the second part of the question. So this is why I think we are in a cult. We are in the cult of personal responsibility. We're in the cult of, I've decided to be personally responsible for my value retention, for my value transmission, and for whatever gains or losses I incur. And I intend to be responsible for the keys to the value that I hold. And I think that, the average person, they're not interested in this. And this is another kind of reason why Bitcoin is not as big as it is. Let me rephrase that, is not as big as it's going to be yet. Okay. And it's because people have a difficult time wrapping their mind around it, because they, like us, we've all been brainwashed too. But the difference is that some of us chose to question the brainwashing. Right? When like when we were told that the government prints money and that's it, some of us sat there and said, why? Why does the government print money? Why does it have to be like this? Like, what, that doesn't make any sense. And so that's why that's a very small part of the population. So this is where Bitcoin actually excels, because besides the freedom enabling technologies of Bitcoin, it has the number go up technology, which is attractive to the layman brain, right? The layman mind. And as a result, that's how we get those people into, to start paying attention and learning about Bitcoin. But just to complete it, I do think, I think the word cult is interesting. I remember asking Julian Linegar about this. He's the CEO of Relay. Yeah. And he has like a bit of a psychology background, and he goes, I don't think it's so bad that we're in a cult, because a cult really by definition is just a certain sized group with a specific set of beliefs. Technically we can classify almost any group into that if we wanted to. I just think we're in a cult that has to do with, we're in a sound money cult that is looking for monetary truth. And the proper definition of value and the proper retention and transmission of value.
We are in a cult that makes us fucking rich. Okay. Like, and we're right. That's the problem, right? Is that every other cult is like, this the end of the world or something crazy is going to happen. It just never happens. And they all, the ones that you hear in like Netflix, they all end up killing each other. Right. Yeah. Bitcoiners are definitely in a cult. We have beliefs, but the difference is that our beliefs speak for themselves. Right? Like we tell you about what we think about Bitcoin. We tell you, look, it's a better money, it's sounder money, number go up, number whatever. And everyone on the outside is like, you guys are crazy, you guys are toxic, you guys are too mean, you guys are whatever. But Bitcoin speaks for itself. Look at the price. So it's like, yeah, you can call us a cult, you can call us whatever, but we're right. Right? So I'm sure that's what every other cult says. But Bitcoin's different.
But you know what? Our Kool-Aid doesn't kill. Our Kool-Aid actually enables freedom.
It makes you rich in the process, right? So it's like, is that a bad cult? The people that want to control the money, the central bankers, they hate it, man. They hate it because their whole reason for existence is they're no longer necessary. They were you could make an argument, right, that they were necessary, but you could make, just benefit of the doubt. You could make an argument that it was a necessary evil, right? You could say that, right? I'm not a historian. I don't know. And I don't act like one either, but they're no longer necessary. Like, I know that for a fact, right? They just haven't come to terms with it. They don't know that they won't exist in 20 years, right? And you saw this with the internet too. You saw it. You saw it with the long distance providers. You saw this with Blockbuster and Netflix. You saw it. You saw it when Napster came around and people just started downloading music, straight to their computer, right? And all the record labels were like, "No, we have to sue them. We have to stop them." You can't stop the internet. It's impossible, right? So what happened? Companies adapted, right? The people that use the internet to benefit flourished. The people that try to fight against it, where are they now? They're nobodies, right? So it's the same thing with Bitcoin. Like, you either adapt or you don't, or you get left behind. Now, the biggest difference between the internet and Bitcoin is that the internet went after traditional industries. Bitcoin is going against the most entrenched industry on the planet, right? That has its tentacles so deep down world governments. You see this with some world governments like India and Turkey, like we've been reporting on Simply Bitcoin. They just banned Bitcoin. So that government isn't working for its people. That government is working for its central bank, right? So it's going to be a bloody fight. But man, we have the incentives on our side because it's so simple. You could just come join our team anytime you want and you're going to benefit from it. We don't care, so it's going to be interesting. And I think it's going to expose, the rot that we always knew that was there, that you mentioned earlier, like in the United States and the UK, it's like this very slick type of corruption. I think Bitcoin is going to expose it for what it is. And it just wakes people the hell up. It's awesome.
I just wanted to add to that. Bitcoin has something that the fiat system doesn't have. Okay. And it has the hearts and minds of people. When, the Bitcoiners, I've never seen anybody decide that their government issued currency is that important that they had to write, that they had to create songs about it and stuff like that. And of course, yes, somebody can argue, hip hop artists sit there and throw money at the camera while, having ladies in cars. They're not actually sitting there. Like, it's not, they're not actually glorifying the money. They're glorifying themselves. Okay. In this case, Bitcoin, we sit there and we cheer that system. It captures the hearts and minds. When you get into Bitcoin, you may come to it for NGU, but then you stay for the sound money. That's something that I have never experienced in my life, with the exception of something that is a grassroots movement, something that comes from the people. And when something comes from the people, I'm sorry, but the system doesn't stand a chance.
Of course not. That is the reason we've started 21ism and the sound culture revival. There's so much art and so much creativity and love and excitement. Like you said, you compare that to no one's fucking excited about the currency that they're born into. They just use it and pay the taxes, because if they don't, they go to prison. That's as simple as that. It is just violence that forces them to use it. And my real question is, when we're talking about this is a industry that is going to be completely wrecked, like completely bulldozed over the say next 20 years, and you had Netflix, taking over Blockbuster, and you've had all of these companies that failed because they didn't keep up. The difference I see with this is that this is an industry that is going to fight back. I think a lot of people are sat on their laurels. A lot of people are just saying, "Oh, a number go up. That's amazing. Everything's going to be fine." I'm pretty concerned about the way that governments are going to react, because if they have any brains at all, they will understand that all their power comes from the ability to print. All their power comes from the ability to control the money. And if that is taken away, they actually have to be responsible. They actually have to be they have to be using the money in a way that the citizens are going to accept, because they're not just going to be able to create more of it. And the only other option is to push up the taxes, which again is going to annoy everyone. So they're on very thin ice. And I wondered what both your thoughts are on the privacy side of Bitcoin, and if you think this is a battle that we win on that side, because what if they do 6102? I know it's a lot harder, but what if they do threaten people with life imprisonment or something crazy like that? There will be people who will retreat because they will be scared. Do you think that the tools that we have available now maybe need to be pushed a little bit more and that people should wake up, or are you sort of the other side and thinking, no, it'll be all right?
So they could try, right? They could definitely try, and I'm sure that there's definitely going to be casualties. But the problem is, right, is that you can't do that on a massive scale, right? So the order by FDR, right, for the Great Depression, the seizure of gold, or making illegal for private citizens to own gold. Part of the reason that was successful, right, is because gold bars, a lot of people just stored that in banks already, right? But try having a mass order of like, look, we're the government and we now think it's illegal to hold Bitcoin because it's a threat to our system. Please, everybody turn in their Bitcoin at the same time. What you're going to see is the exact opposite. You're just going to see a mass exodus of people just exiting out, right? So then how do you stop peer-to-peer? Because you've seen this in countries that have already made Bitcoin illegal, right? How do you stop peer-to-peer transactions, right? How do you stop people from, because it's a much bigger problem, right? It goes down to a fundamental level, right? If you're a lot of people, and you see this in Venezuela, in the West, we have the luxury, if we see Bitcoin and, we kind of see it as not obviously we're Bitcoiners, but a lot of investors in the West, they see Bitcoin as a speculation, right? I'm going to buy this because I think it's going to go up. A lot of people in the undeveloped world, they don't see Bitcoin as an investment. They see Bitcoin as a way to survive, right? So, if a government decides to make Bitcoin illegal, what's going to happen is exactly what's been happening. Another government, on the other side of the planet is going to say, "Hey, Bitcoiners, come here," and as Bitcoin, the power that Bitcoin gives you is it not only gives you the power to vote with your wallet, right? If your government starts printing too much money, you just exit, right? Like many of us have, but it also gives you the power to vote with your feet. Because you could memorize, for the first time in human history, you could memorize a 24-word or 12-word phrase. You could keep it in your head. You could cross a border, and you could bring hundreds, if not billions of dollars in your mind, right? And if you look at history back in the 30s, a lot of the reason that the Jews stayed in Nazi Germany, even though they knew what was going on around them, they were witnesses. A lot of the reason that they couldn't leave is because they couldn't bring their wealth with them. But Bitcoin changed all of that. So how do you stop that? I keep going back to the internet. How do you stop that? How do you enforce this $10,000 travel rule that they have now? If you're going into a country, you have to report whether you have $10,000 in cash or not. How do you stop Bitcoin? They're going to ask you what's in your mind. Like what words? It's you can't enforce those rules. So governments are going to have to adapt, or they're going to be left behind. That's just how it is.
I kind of see, I agree with you. It's very hard to seize it. My concern is that governments, if I was a government, say I'm the British government, if I work out that I can't continue my disgusting way of operating, I cannot enslave populations, I cannot go to war, I cannot do all of these things that I was previously doing because of Bitcoin, or I won't be able to, and I was a psychopath, which they are, I would probably do something along these lines. I would just look at every single exchange, force them that they have to show everyone who's bought anything with fiat through any exchange, anything that is on there, I would seize. Even if someone has held their own keys, if they have not coin joined and it is that they can't prove that they no longer own those coins, I will seize their assets. And if they will not hand over the amount of Bitcoin that I believe they have, I will imprison them or take their other assets like their property. That's how I would operate.
That would be totally doable 8 years ago. Now, when you have Coinbase just going public, when you have the Republican minority leader saying, we have to learn how to adopt this technology, or we're in risk of being left behind. This is the House Republican leader of the United States saying that, right? You have the mayor of Miami, right? if the whole world does not coordinate and make Bitcoin illegal all at once, all you need is one node, all you need is one miner that's still working on one side of the world, and Bitcoin's just going to keep working like nothing happened. Like, that's the problem. It's like a virus, dude. You can't, unless you kill it all at once, it will just keep replicating. It will come back, So it's like, do you want to go the route of seizure? Do you want to go the route of, imprisoning your own system, your own citizens for owning a piece of code, for owning a password? Is that the route that you want to go through? Or do you want to go the other route, which is like, instead of, doing the things that you've been doing, right? Trying to work with your citizens, right? And I think that the world would not only be a much more fair place, but it will also be a much wealthier place as well, right? Because that's how you build wealth. It's cooperating with other people. And at the end of the day, the government is supposed to serve its own people. It's not supposed to be this tyrannical force, right? So in the United States specifically, our Constitution was built on those principles. And I think they're so important. And I think that a lot of people in the West take that for granted, right? But coming from a country that was completely destroyed, by socialism and this idea of like, I know what's best for you, you don't know what's better for yourself. Coming to United States and seeing the ideals that this country has, man, if the United States government decide, which I don't think it's going to, but if it decides to ever make Bitcoin illegal one day, right, it's going completely against what the founding fathers and what the Constitution says in itself. Like it doesn't make sense, right? So is that going to stop people? Is that going to stop the corrupt, evil politician? No, it's not. Look at Brad Sherman, calling for Bitcoin's ban, right? Calling exactly the things that you've been saying. We are the world's reserve currency. That our power comes from that, right? We have to nip this in the butt. The problem is that works, but you need to have every single person saying that, because as long as you have the opposition saying something different, you can't kill it. You can't stop it, So it's very interesting, man. And now that you have Blockstream launching satellites into space, like Bitcoin nodes into space, dude, it just becomes harder and harder to kill. And I think we're at this point right now where it's economically impossible to kill, right? It's theoretically it's possible, but economically, I don't think so, right? Because you would be destroying a huge percentage of the U.S. economy, just because you're like, look, we're banning Bitcoin. You're going to see, man, the exchanges are going to become more and more powerful, right? So yeah, man, it's going to be exciting. But I definitely agree, bro. We're in for quite a battle for sure.
Yeah, and Phil, any ideas on this? I mean, I don't know whether I explained what I'm saying correctly. I'm in complete agreement with you there, Nico, in terms of they can't stop this network. They can't. My real question is, should people be waking up a little bit more and seriously considering using the tools, using CoinJoin, making sure they have some plausible deniability, breaking links, stopping this tracking so that they are prepared for what could come? I think that's really my question. I'm 100% with you, though. They're not stopping the network. They just can take away people's freedoms who don't deserve it taken away, and that concerns me.
I think that privacy and security is obviously important. At the same time, I think it's our responsibility to, number one, to understand how to use these tools. Number two, to make these tools easy to use. Okay. I think that one of the biggest challenges in Bitcoin is that a lot of us are technical. Okay. A lot of us are technical, and the majority of the world out there is not. Okay. And so even though these tools may be easier for us to use, we need them to be easy. If privacy and security are a norm and a standard, it really can't be stopped, But as long as we keep these privacy tools, kind of like, making them just not entirely, let's say, part of the user experience, I think that becomes challenging. Now, I just want to also clarify, I am not talking about in any way, shape, or form obfuscating the base layer or anything like that. That's a load of crap. Okay, that leads to us not knowing how many Bitcoin we have, and then that makes us into, something like Monero. Okay, where everybody's cheering for the privacy, but nobody really has any clue how many Monero there are. And let's be honest, I don't think anybody gives a fuck because they're just trying to use it for whatever reason they're using it for. So they don't really care how many. Exactly, it's transactional. So, okay, fair enough. But I do think that we're going to see these privacy tools on a higher layer than Bitcoin, right? On the second layer and the third layers of Bitcoin. And like I said at the beginning, I think it's our responsibility to understand how to use these tools to help the funding of the development of these tools, right? And to help the devs that do this, and to make these tools as easily accessible as possible. Because you know what? To your point, okay, sure, we can end up in a situation where we have a tyrannical government like this, okay, and they can do many of those things, and for a certain portion of the population, those tactics will work, okay. But for some of us, we have nothing to lose. For some of us, we have understood that giving, let's say, giving yourself or giving your time or whatever it is to a greater cause is valuable. And the idea of monetary freedom for future generations, in no way am I advocating this, but it is something it is something worth dying for. Because if we look at all the people's value that has been robbed, to the present day, think of the people that killed themselves in, the Wall Street crashes and stuff like that over, a number change on a screen. Really? Like, those people had families. That what happened to those people's families are ripple effects of a poor monetary system that just a very small group of people get to benefit from no matter what happens. Now, you're going to tell me that, all of us, like the rest of humanity, we don't deserve to have an equal share in the value that money represents because we aren't at the top of that spigot. Like, fuck you. You know what?
Exactly.
If it ruins your fucking party, no problem. It's like I will kill myself. It's not an issue. I'm just saying, people don't realize once you capture hearts and minds, you know what? I truly believe that Bitcoiners on average have staked their claim and have nothing to lose because the fiat system is nothing to go back to. And I don't think that people in the fiat system are prepared for that.
I agree that I completely agree with Phil's point. The genie is out of the bottle and it's not going back. Self-custody is out of the bottle. And I think that central bankers, specifically Christine Lagarde, right, because she's having an attack, she doesn't understand. Like, she thinks, she's like, okay, we can make central bank digital currencies, quick, and we can have mobile wallets. But it's like, it's much deeper than that. It's like, we want the keys to our wealth. No one else. And Phil's absolutely right. Man, if it comes to it, we're willing to take this all the way. We don't care because we refuse. And a lot of people, it's not just Phil and I, we refuse to go back to a system in which they control our keys. Fuck that. Fuck it. I'm not going back. It's like just thinking about banking, like I have my bank account because I need it, right? Because I have a couple businesses, but it's like I just use it for that. I use it as a checking account. I don't use it to save. I don't keep my money there. I keep it in Bitcoin because and it's like, and I think it's only a matter of time, as the population gets older and as the boomer generation, which is the generation that has the most wealth and they control basically everything, man, as they start getting older, do you think that the new generation, man, I haven't talked to anyone under the age of 30 that doesn't work in banking, right? If they work in banking, it's a different story, right? But I haven't talked to anyone under the age of 30 that dislikes Bitcoin. Not one person. They could not understand it. They could like Doge. They could like shit coins. But the concept of self-custody, the concept of having a money in which I can transact with anyone and I don't have to ask permission from that person, man, we're not going backwards.
I just want to add one more point about the privacy and the security aspect. In no way, again, people that think that they're going to evade governments, right, and that you're going to buy a mansion and that you think the government's not going to be able to find my Bitcoin because of coin joins and this and that. Guess what? Okay, if you go and buy $1 million house, they're going to do an inquiry. Okay, when you go to do this, and they're going to look at your last, at least in certain states, or they're going to look at the last 3 to 6 months of your revenue. You also have to prove how much money you earn. It's not like all of a sudden this money appears out of nothing. So my point about the privacy tools is not about evading the government. It's about our right? We are not criminals because we choose to embrace privacy, and because we choose to embrace security, and because we choose to not let a proven incompetent government entity decide whether our transactions are valid or not. Okay? Like that's what's insane. So I just, I just want to stress that, it's like look, at the end of the day, they are the gatekeepers right now. So if you're going to go off and sell your Bitcoin and do all this kind of privacy stuff, at some point, you are going to have to, depending on what you choose to spend your Bitcoin on, if it's a really big item, you're going to have to show your revenue. And again, it also depends on where you live, of course. I'm talking about for me in the States, or if you're in Canada, you have to show them where the revenue came from. Okay? So you're going to end up paying for the tax on it. So again, like at the end of the day, right now in the current system, if you spend big, it is going to get noticed. But that is no reason for us not to have privacy, not to have security, and for us not to help fund the development and learn and make these tools available.
Two really big points from both of you there. So firstly, the point about under 30s, just even if they don't understand it, they're very, very much with it. They're not so against it, whereas it's sort of the boomer generation that have a different view usually. That's a really important point, because as this wealth transfer happens and as the boomers die out and the money goes into the hands of the millennials, it changes things massively. And the only thing that I see in the way of that, the only time that I have pushback from people in my age group is always the fucking environment. That's the only one where, like, there's been some great pieces written. There's all the evidence out there. You can argue it to the death, but there is a huge amount of people. They have this idea in their head that Bitcoin is going to kill the environment. And I can't tell you how many people have argued that point with me. And they've said, oh, I get what you're saying with Bitcoin, but I'm not going to invest in it because it's going to kill the environment. So I think that's one thing we need to try and get across. And I know we're right on it, but it needs to be put across. And the other thing about getting money back into the system is absolutely right. It's the same here. If you're going to take your money and you're going to make it as private as you can, you try and get it back in, no fucking way. They've got all the checks in place. You're not going to do it. I think really when you're doing something with that money, you need to be thinking about this is a separate economy. If you're sucking that liquidity out of the legacy economy, and there are some things that are tied to that, like property purchases, stock market, et cetera, if you ever want to sell that Bitcoin to buy any of those assets, maybe there's an argument to be had that the privacy side is not going to help you in terms of evading tax. It just means that people can't spy on you as much because you're not going to get that back in. But this separate economy is what I find really exciting, and to see that, trade between Bitcoiners using this different system. I don't ever want to go back to the other system. I mean, there are some things I have to right now, but fuck, I don't ever want to go back if I don't have to.
Oh yeah, 100%. I mean, this is such a better system. I mean, and again, to your point, right? I think that the future is what's exciting. The Bitcoin ecosystem is growing out. I mean, I think it was Documenting Bitcoin that just tweeted out yesterday that house that sold in the Netherlands for Bitcoin. What did they sell it for? I don't even remember. I think it was 20. I don't remember how many Bitcoin. But that's just the beginning. We've seen boats get sold for Bitcoin. We've seen homes get sold for Bitcoin. It's going to happen more and more. People desire the strongest, the hardest money, right? And we want to spend the crap.
No matter.
Sorry, oh no, go ahead.
Just to add to your point, dude, no matter how much propaganda, no matter who they get the head of the central bank to go on TV and to go in front of the camera and say, listen, our money's secure, our money's whatever, doesn't matter. The fact is that people are going to go towards Bitcoin, no matter how much brainwashing, it doesn't matter. And to go back to the climate point that I think is a very good one, like I forget, it was like Dr. Bitcoin MD, maybe it was Psychedelic Bart, but essentially saying like the communists, the socialists, and the climate activists are going to be the last ones to come to Bitcoin, meaning they're going to be the poorest ones. And, money runs the world, right? So if we're heading towards the future that Bitcoin does become, or tries to become, or as it continues to grow in market cap, right? The people with the power are going to be the Bitcoiners. They're not going to be the broke climate activists. They're the Bitcoiners are going to be the ones with the actual sway in society. And I think that you're going to start to see that this decade. I think the last 2 decades were dominated by the big tech guys, the Silicon Valley guys. But dude, I think their time, they had a good run, but I think that this decade or the next couple of decades are going to be dominated by Bitcoiners, right? Bitcoiners are going to be the ones with the money. Bitcoiners are going to be the ones with the bot politicians. And you're already starting to see this, right? You're seeing this with you wouldn't call them bot. They're not really necessarily bot. They're just trying to attract business to their cities, and they're doing a great job, right? So I think that as time goes by, you could have whatever ideology, you could have whatever belief, you could call Bitcoin bad, you could call it bad for the environment, but it's a matter of fact. If you don't buy Bitcoin, you're going to be much poorer than the guy that buys Bitcoin, right? And no matter what ideology, belief you have, that doesn't change, right? It's black and white. So, man, go with the climate FUD, bro. You're going to have fun staying poor. It's just your problem. It's not mine.
And actually, just to continue on that, right? I think that the climate activists and all that, I think that this is all just concern trolling, okay? And it's like virtue signaling, because these people, right? Do they not like live in a home? Was that home not painted, right? Paint is lead based in some cases, but in other cases it's petroleum based. You also have everything that everybody uses. I mean, is more or less plastic. What is plastic? Plastic is petroleum based. It's oil. Like, these people are such psychotic hypocrites. It doesn't make any sense. Like, think about all the resources that get used. Like, they sit there and they say, oh yeah, Bitcoin's boiling the ocean. Okay. And then but they don't sit there and measure, okay, well, how much, what's the carbon footprint of the current banking system per country? Right. And what are the metrics of that? Like, nobody's sitting there talking about that. Instead, they're pointing at Bitcoin. Why are they pointing at Bitcoin? Because Bitcoin is transparent. Whereas everything else is not. Everything else is muddy and confusing because it's bullshit.
And while they're saying all of this, they'll be posting it on Instagram and Twitch and every other fucking social media thing, which is running a server somewhere so that they can access it while they're sat on their phone. They don't think about the energy consumption that uses while they just talk a load of shit and have a load of people listening to it and storing their photos about them at some protest. And the truth is, if they just bought Bitcoin, it would be a much better protest. And they align with us in more ways than they think. A lot of the people that really want change, a lot of the people that are really pissed off with governments and the way that things are run, I think a lot of them just go to that kind of virtue signaling side and the environment sort of eco side because they just get a bit lost and they don't really get to the root of the problem, which is the money. And they don't see that this is a much more effective way of doing it. But once they do, they'll come over again, but they'll just do it, in a few years when we're 500,000, a million a coin or something like that, and then they miss out because they've been lazy, I suppose.
Dude, look, you're exactly right, and I think it's very black and white, dude. It's like these people, they could say whatever they want, they could bitch, they could complain, they could whatever. But it's like, dude, that's your problem. And you're going to pay a monetary value for being that stupid. Like, it's that simple. Like, you will get left behind, right? And this isn't only just applies to people. This applies to governments. This applies to companies. This applies to anyone that doesn't humble themselves enough to understand what is happening, right? What is happening is we've essentially discovered a technology that essentially treats everyone equal, right? And And man, like the possibilities that unlocks, it's what we've been talking about. We've been talking about this the whole pod. Like we can't even, conceptualize that right now, right? But it's just like, man, it's just these people, bro. They're gonna get left behind, and they're gonna hurt, and they're gonna hate it for it. But it's like as soon as you just decide, like, just shut up and buy Bitcoin, you're going to become one of Bitcoin's biggest proponents, So it's like, that's the power, dude. It's like, this is so strong that I think that, and governments have been trying to ignore it, the United States specifically. They just, I think they've been wanting it to go away. So it's just, man, the ride is going to be awesome. I'm very excited.
Do you guys have any specific projects or things that you are really excited about at the moment? Any sort of favorite bits of software or hardware that you're using that you really help that will really help move things along and get people to understand and use these things? Is there anything that's particularly exciting?
Okay, all right, so I'll start. Every single open source, and I know that's in brackets because we had the open source battle. Every single open source node project. Okay, I'm excited about all the node projects because I think that everybody should run a node.
Can you pick your favorite? One node.
Okay,
one node.
But it's so tough. Okay, so look, how about this? Okay, I run a MyNode, I run an Umbrel, I run a Raspberry Blitz, and I run an Embassy node. Okay. I use the MyNode the most. So I'll leave it at that. Because I can't really say that I have a favorite. I like them all. It's just that's the one I use the most. I don't know what to say, But I love what they're all doing, and people should definitely check out Embassy OS, Embassy Node, which is Start9 Labs. They have a great little product that's really easy to use. No, I'm not sponsored by them. I just like their product. But another project that I'm really excited about that I really enjoy, going along the lines of this, kind of, not your keys, not your coin, is the Spectre do-it-yourself hardware wallet. I got one of those. I also built one. I love what Stepan and Ben Kaufman are doing there. And I'm sorry, I know there's other developers there. I don't remember the names. I apologize. But that whole team is doing amazing work. I love the do-it-yourself hardware wallet. I think that that's totally the way to go. And yeah.
Cool. Very good answer. And Nico?
Man, look, there's so many good projects, but in terms of importance, in terms of like, I think that what's actually going to leave an impact, I think the most important Bitcoin project right now, and it doesn't even come close, is Bitcoin Pay Server. I think that a lot of previous companies, they tried to approach that, from the fiat system, which is like, I'm going to create this centralized entity, and you know what I'm saying, like BitPay. But I think BTC Pay Server takes the best principles and ideals of Bitcoin, and they're using it. You saw, or we reported it, Tesla essentially contributing back, fixing their vulnerabilities. And you could assume that Tesla is using BTC Pay Server to accept payments for their Teslas themselves, right? So I think, I think that this is just the beginning, like we've been saying. I think that you're going to see a bunch of other projects that are going to fulfill other needs. I think that nodes right now are super awesome to Bitcoiners, right? So, we'll build together a Raspberry Pi, we'll put together a 3D case, we'll learn to solder or not learn to solder like I'm going through right now. So like we'll put ourselves through these uncomfortable learning processes, but the general public, they're not, right? They're going to want to use something that just works, right? And I think BTC Pay Server right now, it just works, right? So you could pay anyone. You're buying something online, whatever. You use BTC Pay Server, it pops up an address, you send it there. It's free to use. It's just, it's awesome, right? And I think that just unlocks more possibilities. And I think that there's going to be something that we don't see that's going to just be built on top of that, and just the technology is going to get better and better.
Yeah, that's so true. It's such a fucking cool project, and it's so slick. It is such an important thing to have, and like you say, having Tesla using it and these bigger companies going to do the same. That feedback loop is going to be beautiful. Very exciting stuff. Well, guys, look, I try and keep these under an hour and a half. it's been really, really cool to catch up with you guys and to learn the way that you're thinking about things. And I've really enjoyed it. It's been awesome. And before you sort of finish up, I'd like to just get you guys to do a bit of shilling towards your pod and your videos and everything that you're doing so people can find you.
All right, very cool. I mean, on Twitter, I'm Coin Icarus, and on Telegram, I'm also Coin Icarus, and obviously, I'm the co-host of at Simply Bitcoin with Nico or Bitvolt7, and I also do a podcast, long format like this, which is fun with Bitcoin.
Yeah, I've actually just been listening to one of your episodes. It was really, really good.
Oh, cool! Thank you.
No, really awesome. And any other sort of places we can point people to so they can find you guys?
Just go on YouTube, search Simply Bitcoin, hit subscribe, and I hope you like the content, but hit subscribe first.
and you can also find us on Twitter at Simply Bitcoin _ I think we are.
Cool.
You'll be able to tell it's us. It's the orange circle that says Simply Bitcoin.
It's got like a rabbit in it, hasn't it, or something like that?
Oh no, that's my personal podcast.
That's your pod.
Yeah.
That's right.
Simply Bitcoin. We're totally like no frills. It's an orange circle that says Simply Bitcoin.
You'll see it from a mile away. Okay, it just stands out. You can't miss it. So yeah, it's good stuff. But man, thank you so much for having us, Max. I had a lot of fun. Definitely, we went down our own rabbit hole. It was great. Thank you.
Yeah, with you, this was amazing.
Awesome. Yeah, I've really enjoyed it. Thanks again, guys. And if you just stay on the line just for 2 secs when I stop the recording, just so we save all our files. I don't want to lose this one. It was a banger.
No worries.